Hello and welcome back to Jehan's Baithak. I'm your host Didi, and joining me today is my friend and your co-host Vedant. On our new segment, Jehan's Baithak, we talk about Jehan Daruvala's weekend in F2 as we follow the Formula 2 circus around the world. So let's grab some chai, take our seats, ready our opinions, and dive right into the conversation. Hello Vedant. A tale of two halves this weekend for Formula 2. What were your thoughts?
Oh, well, definitely. I mean, the entire weekend was pretty roller coastery for Formula 2, for Jehan himself and for Formula 2 as a whole as well. So it's good to end it on a good note, on a better note than end it on a sour note.
All is well that ends well. Like they say,
Absolutely.
definitely a rocky start to the Saudi Arabian GP for both Formula One and Formula Two. But we'll get into that. But that is not the biggest thing that we're here to talk about. The first thing and the most important thing for us that we're here to talk about is that hashtag startup plan gains momentum as Jehan and Prema deliver a podium after a rocky start uh, to the Saudi Arabia GP weekend, like we said before. But yeah, what a performance from Jehan. After a bad qualifying, he had a component issue that we don't have a lot of detail about. Even then, and then he couldn't get a good run in qualifying, a clean run because of traffic and whatever that Prema strategy was. Didn't really, wasn't able to make up a lot of places in the sprint race. He did make up a few places, but not a lot in the sprint race, given the number of stoppages we had. But an absolutely scintillating performance from Jehan to go from P14 to P3 in the feature race, bag a good 15 points, and then Prema also delivering with their strategy call today.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the strategy, I think, played a key role because had Jehan started on the mediums at the end of the pack and, did like every other runner around him was doing, it would not have been a great differentiate as such. But starting on the softs, making up those places in the first place and at the start, and then taking that early pit stop to get that net third and fourth positions. That was a brilliant strategy call from Prema. And even in the sprint race, he started 14th again and finished P7. Obviously, it was net P7 after a few penalties, but he was P9 at the flag. So from P14 to P9 is still a good result.
Yeah, absolutely. And like you said, he started on the soft and the strategy paid off. Obviously, we saw his teammate Dennis Hogger, who started four places ahead of him, who was on the alternate strategy. He went long on the mediums and then pitted for the softs. Obviously, his pit stop, his changeover to the soft tire was affected by the fact that he flat spotted them right out of the gate. But obviously that soft tire and obviously that Prema doesn't look that great on the soft tire though, in general, because we've seen both the Jehan and Dennis struggle in qualifying just for pace in general. We saw that in Bahrain, we saw that here. And then even, the fact that Jehan had to pit so early, he lost a place to Roy Nissany on lap 6 right before he, pitted. That goes to show that Prema is definitely struggling on the soft tire, but however on the mediums it has great pace. We saw Dennis Hogger go for 22 laps on those mediums, and then we also saw Jehan Daruvala complete 21 laps on those medium tires. So clearly, Prema has some things to work out during that Barcelona test next weekend, and hopefully, if they get on top of that soft tire issue, we are looking at a definite title challenge from Jehan Daruvala and Prema this season.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, even though, Theo Pourchaire and Logan Sargent not sorry,
Liam
no,
Lawson.
Liam Lawson. Yeah, they look the favorites, but it is Formula Two, and we saw what happened this weekend. So the title challenge is obviously wide open, and it's just the second round of the season. There are what 11 or 12 rounds more to go.
There's 11 more rounds to go.
Yeah,
Yep.
so absolutely, it's going to be a brilliant season ahead.
Yeah, and it's time. It's time. All those people who weren't sure about hashtag startup plan after last weekend, come on, let's jump on that train. Let's get this going. Let's get the momentum going, and let's just manifest this into existence. Let's manifest Jehan's Formula Two World Championship into existence. And let's jump on this train and let's get going. Hopefully this run will continue for Jehan when F2 comes back at Imola in a couple weeks' time. Obviously, we won't be seeing F2 at Australia, but they'll be testing in Barcelona next week. So we'll see. But let's get into the second headline of the three for us this weekend. We alluded to it at the start of the podcast, and let's talk about it again. F2 surprisingly delivers great racing on Sunday after a traditionally frustrating Saturday. And I have a question for you, Vedant. And I tweeted this out, but we didn't get any traction on the tweet. And that is, does F2 need spotters to go racing safely? We have spotters in IndyCar and NASCAR for a reason. In NASCAR it is mandated for safety. So do we need this in F2 also? Because obviously, there are racing incidents, but we also saw a lot of incidents, especially in qualifying and practice sessions, when all of these guys were on different sorts of programs and runs and things like that. And one that comes to mind is the one between Ralph Boschung and Yuri Vips towards the end of qualifying. That was really close. Both the cars could have been out for that session. But if we had a spotter there, that could have been avoided. And then we also had a lot of penalties for, holding someone up, impeding someone. I think there were like 4 different penalties for that. So that could also have been avoided. And not just the penalties, but the whole risk that comes with impeding someone could have been avoided around a circuit like Jeddah.
Yeah, I mean, I think spotters is a step too, not a step too far, but it would be a great change for European racing as such. But I think the circuit layout at Jeddah exaggerates the situation at hand, basically, because if you go to any other circuit, there are incidents, there are crashes, because Formula 2 cars run so close to each other because of almost zero differences, right? But yeah, I mean, I think if it is any other circuit, like let's say Bahrain or let's say Silverstone, for example, or even any other street circuit like let's say Singapore. So I don't think spotters would be absolutely necessary as such.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be at every race. You can pick and choose where you want the spotters to be, and given the way especially the F2 teams operate, it'll just be another engineer on the team or someone else who will have to take up that role for those sessions. Obviously, having a spot in the race for F2 maybe does not make a lot of sense, but for qualifying and for practice sessions, I feel a lot could be avoided on street circuits like Jeddah, Monaco, and maybe even Singapore, where especially during qualifying, where people are lining up and there's a whole queue of cars that are slow, and then there are a few people who are on flying laps. You can avoid that whole situation and see what is going on track with an extra pair of eyes. But again, that's a question for the teams.
But
I don't think there's anything stopping the teams from having a spotter if they choose to do so for safety reasons.
yeah,
But again, it's up to the FIA to mandate it and to make sure that the safety is looked after, I guess.
yeah, but I mean, on the street circuits, it's I don't know how the logistics would work because on street circuits we have high walls in European motorsports, right? In Formula One and Formula Two. So I'm not sure how the spotter would be able to spot the cars, right? But
I,
yeah, but
it'll all come with the infrastructure and whatever changes need to be made,
yeah,
I guess,
exactly.
because there
So
is special infrastructure sometimes at these NASCAR races and at IndyCar races. But again, just another question that we want to throw out there. Um, Anything else regarding the weekend that you want to talk about, Vedant, before we move on to the third thing and talk about pretty much the rest of the field and how they performed this weekend?
yeah, well, I mean, I think the whole motorsport community is in consensus that this circuit was this circuit is not up to the racing standards that are required in Formula 2 and Formula 1. And of course, we will talk about Formula 1 in a Formula 1 podcast as well. But yeah, I think there's nothing more to add as such.
Yeah, one more thing that comes to my mind is the fact that what were the stewards doing this weekend? And when I talk about that, I'm especially talking about the penalty that was handed out to Dennis Hogger. Um, I mean, I get it. There was confusion on the pit board. The stewards sent out a message first that the pit lane is open. Everybody needs to go through the pits, and then they realized that hey, the cars of I think Logan Sargent and Jack Doohan are on the way to the pit. On pit lane. So they said, hey, everybody stay out, and obviously that sign flashed. But apparently, according to the Prema radio, they did reconfirm with the race director who told them to go through the pits. And then not only do they go ahead and, obviously Dennis Hogger lost out on a potential race win, and ended up, I think, outside the points. But he also got a 10-second stop-go penalty. And on top of that, I think he got 2 penalty points on his license.
Yeah.
That seems really extreme. I really don't know what that was a reaction to. If anything, at the most, I feel, Prema should have been fined because it was their call and not the drivers. Given the fact that, obviously, there is an aspect that the driver should look for, all the message boards on track. But there's a lot going on. And, it was really created by the stewards themselves or the race director himself.
Yeah, I mean, there were two different messages within 22 seconds of each other. And after the second message, the Prema pit wall did contact the race director, and they gave the instruction to continue into the pit lane. But I think, it's a question of what is the legal words and, the law of the word written in the books. Because as per the the report of the race directors after Prema raised the issue, is that the pit board, the flashing lights on the on the main straight, overrule the race director's messages because it was just a reconfirming chat. It was not an official message. So yeah,
and we learn everything,
Yeah.
and we learn a new thing every day.
Absolutely.
About F1, F2, and their rules. I mean, we saw a similar thing with Lewis Hamilton a couple of years ago, but not as extreme, I guess.
I mean, I think Formula One and Formula two teams in a couple of years' time, if this goes on, they'll have a lawyer on their pit wall to read the word of the law.
More than anything, it was just like having flashbacks from last year and
Yeah.
what happened in Formula One last year, and that was the more concerning thing. And I think the last little thing that I want to mention, under this headline is the fact that restarts again. The restart line is way ahead on the straight after the last corner, the last hairpin. So I'm not surprised what happened during sprint race did happen. But I think F1 needs to come up with a decent solution for that. And again, the spotters can help with that. The spotters can tell the drivers whether the leader has gone with the race restart or not. Unless there's a better way to do it, because clearly the teams don't have enough information to tell their drivers whether or not to go or not to go.
Yeah. I mean, it was a very similar incident to what happened in Mugello in 2020.
I mean, it is the incident in Mugello that
Yeah.
that began all of this, and then we have seen this happen over and over again.
Yeah,
We
exactly.
almost saw it happen at Monza a couple times, and then now here. So it's not surprising at all. And I was surprised we got away with it. I mean, I won't be surprised if it happens in Formula One too.
Yeah. Let's hope
Let's
not.
hope not.
Yeah.
But yeah, now let's talk about the last headline for us this weekend. The last of the three things that we want to talk about, and that is Felipe Drugovich and Richard Verschoor. Richard Verschoor being the bigger of the two stories, deliver as Pourchaire, Lawson, and Hughes face Heartbreak. Now again, goes to show what went on this weekend. Felipe Drugovich had a very, very good weekend, from qualifying until obviously bagging those 25 points in the feature race. Richard Verschoor, definitely, I feel, an early title challenger given how he has performed over the two, weekends. I think he got 12 points last weekend and another 18 or so this weekend. So, definitely up there. And then Pourchaire, nothing went right for him. Lawson had a good sprint race, won the sprint race, but basically lost his points in the feature race in a very F2-esque fashion where his wheel didn't go on properly. So you can't be surprised at that. And then Jake Hughes lost his podium yesterday because of a technical rule that we also learned about this weekend, and that was there was too much plank wear, which means I guess the teams were trying to extract performance by running the car lower than they would have been allowed to, basically. So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. I mean, Theo Pourchaire is pretty damn unlucky. Was pretty damn unlucky this weekend, but then again, as they say, you make your own luck, and his crash in practice may have triggered everything that happened after that.
But
So
at the same time, he was not the only car to crash throughout, before the
yeah.
feature race. We saw Jack Doohan, Logan, we saw so many people crash. But, no issues with them. However, Pourchaire crashed in practice, couldn't complete qualifying, did complete sprint race,
Yeah.
I guess. But feature race, coming from behind, he just like, he was out before he could even challenge for points.
Yeah, absolutely. And Liam Lawson, I mean, as I said, Liam Lawson and Theo Pourchaire are looking to be the championship favorites. But Liam Lawson, after three podiums out of three races,
He was gonna make it 4 out of 4. He
yeah,
was gonna make
and
it
he
four
was
out of
he
four.
was he could have been on the podium as we know him to be, but then again, it's this Formula Two, and once again, 2 weekends in a row, bad pit stops.
but not as many though.
Yeah, not
Not
as
as many.
many.
Last weekend was very farcical regarding the pit stops. But yeah, like you said, it was just weird. I think one other person I want to talk about, Boschong, who got a penalty during the feature race for impeding or like gaining an advantage of the track. We've seen this in F2, and obviously we're recording this before the F1 race starts. And I won't be surprised if we see a similar thing going into the F1 race. But definitely not something that I expected from Ralph Boschong, given how quick he usually is, and the kind of racing we see from him. But definitely a little unimpressive if I were to say, from Ralph Boschong. Obviously got that 5 second time penalty, but in the end he didn't help himself because he didn't have the pace during the feature race. But he also didn't help Ayumu Iwasa's race and Marcus Armstrong. Sorry, Yuri Vips either.
Yeah, I mean, I think Ralph Boschong is. I mean, they all have difficult weekends and they all make mistakes. But Ralph Boschong is not a title contender, as not a conventional title contender as Lawson or Vips or all these guys are, but he is definitely a dark horse in the Formula One, in the Formula Two paddock, and no one expects him to be on the podiums or fight for wins like no one did. At least no one did last year, but he was always in contention, and he may have had an off weekend, but I'm pretty sure he'll be back.
Yep, hopefully. And that's really it from the F2 weekend. I think when I woke up this morning, it felt like there was so much going on. But I guess it just still wasn't enough of action on track given what happened on Friday and Saturday. But obviously, there was another crash in the F2 paddock that happened on, I believe, Friday during practice, and that
Practice.
was Cem Bolugbasi. He suffered a concussion, but is okay, I believe, and is expected to be back in the car at the Barcelona test next week. So obviously, we wish him a speedy recovery, and hopefully, he'll be fit to be challenging in this F2 season as soon as possible. Now, after the end of round two in this F2 season, the championship order looks something like this, I believe. Obviously, the F2 site has not updated yet, so this is all me calculating, doing quick math here, and trying to figure out who's where. So Dragovic leads the championship, I believe, on 43 points, and then it's Liam Lawson in second place, followed by closely by Richard Verschoor, who is the surprised, title contender at the moment, and then followed by Yuri Vips, who had a pretty disappointing weekend after, putting in a few, what I believe to be scintillating overtakes into the last corner across the weekend. And then Theo Pourchaire and Jehan Daruvala are tied with 25 points in fifth place. And obviously, Prema teammate Dennis Hogger picked up 8 points after the end of the feature race. But is there anything else from you, Vedant, that you want to talk about before we close out this podcast?
Well, not that I can think of anything, but yeah, I think Cem Bolugbasi is. I mean, it's a great shame that he crashed in the way he did because it was a huge impact. But then again, we need to remember it was his first street circuit race, and it was his first street circuit race in Formula Two, and I believe it was his first street circuit race overall as well. So and to have it in Jeddah at this infamous track, I would say, is it always was difficult for
I
him.
mean, yeah, and he's not the only one. We saw someone as skilled and as talented as Mick Schumacher have a really terrifying crash yesterday in Formula One qualifying, and then he is out of the weekend, just like Cem Bolugbasi. So
Yeah,
you
absolutely.
know, you just we're just happy that both of them got away, with their crash and they're well, and you know they are on recovery. So that's great. But yeah, thank you Vedant for joining me once again to talk about Formula 2. Obviously, hashtag starter plan is on more than ever. So let's get on that hype train and let's keep it going. But yeah, thank you so much for joining me, and we'll catch you on the next one.